Hello everybody, my name is Vagrant Media and today I'm here to talk to you about the AKAI MPC Live and how we can program it with the AKAI MidiMix. The Novation Launch Key Mini is just here because it looks prettier. We're not going to be discussing the launch key today, we're going to be focusing on the AKAI MidiMix and how we can use the AKAI MPC Live to program the faders and the knobs to suit however we would like to do them. So we'll start off with a completely blank project. So just a disclaimer, I've done this once now. I've done it for a template for my own personal live performances using the AKAI MPC Live 2, and I have selected essentially 8 separate instruments or tracks as they will be in the MPC Live, and I have allocated 3 separate parameters to each channel depending on what it is and depending what I'd like to be able to manipulate in real time. So just for the interests of moving forward with the video, I will typically look to control the filter cutoff or an 1/8 delay or the release of the instrument, and sometimes I may have a pad on the drum kit assigned to one particular knob at the top, so I can control one of the sweeps on the kick. I can filter out the low end, whatever it is that I feel like I need to do with my live performance. So we've started with an empty track, and first of all we need to make sure that the AKAI MidiMix is connected. So I'll go into the menu, into preferences and into MIDI sync. Now if we have a look here, if it'll allow me to view, it won't allow me to zoom in mid video because technology isn't brilliant, but you can see 2 of the configurations in the list. We have the launch key Mini LK Mini MIDI and the MidiMix MIDI 1. Now, I can't entirely explain the logic of why I do this, but I've only made it work by activating control. We activate control for the AKAI MidiMix, and from there I haven't had any problems. So now what we need to do is we need to load up either a drum program or an instrument into some channels so we can start assigning the MIDI mix to those tracks. So I'm just going to do this very quickly. The first track is going to be drums, so I'll select that, drums, that will be drums, and there is track 1. And we're in sequence 1, which I typically call my test bench. So what I tend to do is build my entire track in sequence 1. I put all my layers in sequence 1, and then I'll duplicate it to sequence 2 and then start removing things from it. So we have track 1. We're now going to go ahead and go to track 2. And for this one, we're going to use an instrument, and just for the purposes of simplicity I'm going to use these in order. So we have Bassline, Electric, Hype, Mellotron, Odyssey, Selena and Tube Synth. So that is 7 instruments in total, plus the drum kit is 8, so we have 8 channels on the MPC that we're able to control. So I'll load in the first one, which will be Bassline, and we will name this Bass, and again just name that Bass and make sure it's working. we're working. So that is the bass done. So I'll move on to the next one. Go track 3. Now I need to press plus to create a new plugin, and I'm going to go to the second in the list just for the purposes of the video and call that electric, because that is what it is called. Same again. Electric. And we have track 3, electric. Next we'll move on to number 4, add another program, and this one will be hype. So we'll go here, we'll call this one hype, and here again, and call this one hype. Okay. And I'll just quickly finish the rest of these now. They're pretty self-explanatory from here. Mellotron. And again. And next one is going to be Odyssey. We'll call this one Odyssey, and again Odyssey. 2 more. Selena next. Call this one Selena. This one Selena, and finally number 8, which is Tube Synth. So just for the purposes of simplicity for the video, we've set up 8 tracks. The first is a drum program, and the remaining 7 are the remaining instruments that are available within the MPC as standard. And there we are. So if I flick through the tracks now, we have one of each. We have a drum program, the bass, the electric, hype, Mellotron, Odyssey, Selena, and Tube Synth. Okay, so now we've got our 8 tracks assigned to 8 separate plugins, well 7 separate plugins and 1 drum program, and now we need to start allocating our faders and our knobs to what we would like to assign the parameters to. And to do this, we need to go into our menu and into MIDI control. And the first screen that opens is the general MIDI setup, and this is not the screen that we'll be using. You need to come along to the 3rd tab along the bottom, which says MIDI Learn, and within this you will see 2 options at the top that will not be currently lit up, but these need to be lit up in order for you to be able to assign your MIDI device. So we'll activate Learn Mapping, and what we're going to do firstly is we're going to be assigning the faders to our tracks. And so to do this, I'm going to just create 8 new, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And come up to the top one, and at the moment you won't be able to see very well on here because I need to work on how I can get the reflective screen to be more legible, but you'll see that the target says none and it is currently off, and this is not what we want. So what we'll do is we'll come over to source, and the source that I want for this fader is going to be the drum program. So just come back out of there. So you can assign any of your MIDI to any of these options. You have MIDI track, audio track, program, return, submix and main. And for today we're going to be focusing on program, and then we'll also assign the master main output to the master slider on the MidiMix. So the first one we're going to do then is the drum program. So we'll come into program, we'll select drums, and we will select drums. And then the target, there is an extensive list of options within here, but don't click it when you're assigning the faders. Just turn your function wheel once and it jumps straight to the volume. And so it can get quite overwhelming if you go into that menu, as there is so many different options. But I would recommend starting with your foundations, understanding the basics, and then look at adding a level of complexity to where you assign your faders. So now that we've selected the volume of the drums that we want to assign, this is where it just starts to get a bit autonomous and a bit tedious. You need to press the learn key, and now the AKAI MPC Live is detecting any MIDI triggers. So if I was to move any of the faders or the knobs on this device at this point whilst MIDI learn and enable mapping is activated, it would then assign that MIDI CC number to the fader that we need. So for the purposes of the drums, it's on fader 1, so all I need to do is touch that and that will allow it to assign. But I can see out of the corner of my eye that my AKAI isn't plugged in properly, so I'm just going to remove that epic fail and pause the video while I do that. Okay, so plug my USB in and we're powered up. And so to resume, we have our source selected. We have selected the volume of the drums. We're going to click MIDI learn and then move the slider that we want to control it. And a keen-eyed in there will have seen the screen on the AKAI MPC assigning the channel 1 to data 19, and so now the drums volume is assigned to 1, and now we just need to do the same process for the remainder of our tracks. So into the second one that we've created, and we're going to go to the source and we'll find the program, and number 2 we know is our bass, so we'll select that from the list on the AKAI, and into the second one again, turning the function once, and now we can move number 2. Number 2 has assigned channel to data 23. On to the next, we have next into our electric, select electric, again into the target. Don't get overwhelmed by the menus, just turn your function wheel once, and then we can move number 3, and that has gone to number 27. Once again, onto the 4th, pick our 4th program, which will be hype, into the target, select the volume, and we can move this here, and that's assigned that to MIDI CC 31. And into our next, and rinse and repeat. Program, Mellotron, that's number 5, I believe, if my count in. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, Pipe is 4, mellotron is 5, into the volume, move number 5, that's assigned it to CC49, and back into source, select our program, Odyssey, select target, that's the volume, that's number 6, and 2 more into Odyssey, onto Selena now, MIDI learn, that's number 7, there we go, and we need to assign that to the volume, which I didn't do, so I'll just do that again just so it reads it. And finally, number 8 of our program tracks is Yield Faithful Tube Synth. And we'll select the volume and we'll select the fader. And that is part 1 of using the AKAI MPC Live to assign your faders on your AKAI MidiMix to the separate tracks within your program. Next up, we're going to be looking at assigning the dials on the MidiMix controller to separate parameters within our programs within the MPC Live. Okay, so next we are going to be looking at assigning the knobs on the AKAI MidiMix to individual parameters from our tracks using the plugins. And I do this personally for live performance, as I tend to make progressive house using the MPC Live, and so live synthesis freedom with the dials is very beneficial for me. It allows me a lot more freedom within live performance to control the direction of the track by manipulating the cutoff or the release or the delay, the attack, various different parameters that I like to assign to different instruments depending on what they do within the track. And for the purposes of this section of the tutorial, I'm going to be assigning the cutoff of each individual program, whether we do it from within the sounds section of the instrument itself, or if that facility isn't available, we'll be assigning a low pitch filter cutoff to the program itself, and then using the AKAI MidiMix to control the filter cutoff through the effect itself. And I found this has been, I'm still learning myself on which is optimal. The cutoffs and the filters from within the instruments themselves are certainly a lot cleaner than using the effect itself on the track, but it's a learning curve for everybody, I suppose. Different strokes, different folks, so whatever it is that you prefer. So for the purposes of this now, we will skip the drum track, as I don't tend to add a filter cutoff as such to the drum pad. I've not really found what I like to use the 3 dials for on the drum program yet, so we'll skip that one for now, and we're going to move on to channel 2, track 2, which is the bass, and we'll have a look at what parameters from within the bass we like to see what we want to be able to control in real time. Obviously filter cutoff of bass being one of them. So just a quick mention, and I've found this on a few other tutorial videos in relation to MIDI Learn, and although I haven't experienced any problems with it myself, I will mention it, because if they've mentioned it then they've had issues with it, and I wouldn't be doing my viewers any justice if I didn't mention it. So there have been reports of the MPC Live not taking too kindly to people who don't turn off the MIDI Learn option once they come out of this menu. And so I would always recommend deactivating the MIDI Learn option within the MIDI Learn function screen on the AKAI MPC Live before you come out of this screen, as there's been reports that it confuses the MPC Live. So we'll be doing that. So now if we go into our test bench sequence, and we're going to go to the bass, and for the purposes of the video I'm just going to pick a sound that is going to be a bit clearer to hear than just a sine bass. So I'll just have a quick look at what we've got in here. We'll go there. I'll give that a bit more volume. Okay, so what I'll do now is, I'm not very familiar with Bassline as an instrument. I don't tend to like instruments that are only monophonic, and obviously I know that bass is supposed to be monophonic, but that doesn't stop me. So I will just have a quick look at the instrument itself and see if I'm able to find a way we can adjust the cutoff. So within the instrument itself there is a cutoff option. And so we know that when we go into MIDI control mode, which we'll do now, into the menu, back into MIDI control, and now we're going to hit the plus to create a new control. And in this one, the source is going to be in program. And we're going to select bass. Again, but now the target, we're going to be going to the program itself, and we're just going to look through here until we see the low pass cutoff. So here is all the parameters that you can assign to one of the dials on the AKAI MidiMix, and we'll just have a look through the options here. So I've already gone past the low pass cutoff, as you'll probably see. You might not have seen because the screen's not the clearest, but there is an extensive amount of parameters that we can control within the instrument itself, and you can also assign more than one control to one dial on the AKAI. So if you wanted the cutoff and the resonance to both be controlled by one dial, then you could do that, though I typically wouldn't recommend those two at the same time, because it would go from 0 to Josh Wink's higher state of consciousness in about half a second, and whilst I'm not adverse to Josh Wink's higher state of consciousness, controlling cutoff and resonance together, not the best example. So we'll select low pass cutoff, and once again we need to activate MIDI Learn at the top. And now our cutoff, my brain says that low pass cutoff, and we'll put that so it's going to be on channel 2, as we know, because bass is on channel 2, and we're going to twist the bottom option dial, and that's assigned that within our MIDI control. So if I now come deactivate MIDI Learn and I come out of this menu, I should now, if I turn this all the way open at first, so that is all the way open, and if I keep And you can see it offers a lot more flexibility for live performance. And obviously we've got the volume here as well. And that is assigning the filter cutoff to a MIDI dial on the AKAI MidiMix, and that's using the Bassline plugin. And we've gone into MIDI control and we have created a new MIDI option for control. We found the program we wanted to use. We selected the target from within the program we wanted to manipulate once we turned the dial, and we've executed it by activating MIDI learn and twisting the dial that we wanted to allocate. So that is the filter cutoff on the Bassline plugin and how we can assign the MIDI control options within the AKAI MidiMix to parameters from within the program itself. And so we will now move on to assigning the cutoff on the electric plugin. So we'll come back to our main menu. We'll switch from bass to electric, and we'll start with that. It's got a bit of a well, I won't start naming names, but it sounds very similar to someone's recent album, this sound. So now we are in electric, which is another one of the instruments that comes included with the AKAI MPC Live 2, and we're going to have a look in here to see if we can find a filter cutoff. And we have the bell, we have noise, we have number of voices, we have tremolo, tube and chorus, we have a delay, and we have reverb. And so, is that a low cut? We'll see what that does. It's not having any impact on the cutoff of the instrument itself, so it's not that option. So for the purposes of the electric, what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign a filter cutoff to the track itself, and then we can look at using the MidiMix to manipulate the filter cutoff using the plugin effect. So to do that, we go to our mixer and we make sure at the top that the option is selected for programs, and within this we have the option to control each program's effects. We have up to 4 inserts, and you can also use sends and returns, which is not something that I've managed to do yet, but I will make a tutorial on that once I understand that myself. I've only had the MPC Live 2 myself for 8 weeks, but I am in the process of creating tutorial guides, and essentially that I wish were available to me when I first started with the device. There is a fantastic amount of information out there on YouTube by content creators for tutorials, and they have definitely helped my learning curve be a lot more seamless, shall we say. There's a wealth of knowledge, and the comment sections are always full of helpful people as well, surprisingly enough, which is quite refreshing for YouTube. So yeah, I digress. Back to assigning the filter cutoff for the electric plugin that we have on the AKAI MPC Live. So we'll go into the inserts on the channel itself, and we will go ahead and we will find a low pass filter in the list, which is there, and that is now assigned. So if I open that all the way out, you see it disappears. Very similar to the bass, only now the effect is coming from an effects rack that is assigned to the electric program. The process is very much the same in relation to how we assign it to our parameters within the AKAI MidiMix. So again, we will be going to main, and my apologies, menu. In the menu, once again, back to MIDI control, and we're going to create a new MIDI control. Now the source, again, we're going to go into the program itself and find our electric. Now when it comes to the target, we're going to go to the insert. Now it doesn't, for some reason, let you rename the inserts, which I think would be quite nice for a future AKAI update, as these lists do get quite extensive, and it would just be nice to have insert 1 instead of saying that, just saying what the name of the effect is. But I tend to install my effects racks in the same order, so I know now that insert 1 is my low pitch filter, low pass filter, sorry, and insert 2 is my 1/8 or 1/4 or triplet delay, depending on what instrument it is. Insert 3 is the reverb, which I tend to add to a lot of my leads to be able to control them in real time and create a long delay on the reverb for creating build up in my sequences. And then option 4 is completely different depending on whatever instrument it is. So we go into insert 1, and as this is just a low pass filter, we only have 2 options in here. If this was to be a delay or a reverb or a filter gate or a stutter or any of the other extensive effects that come preloaded with the AKAI MPC Live, then there is a lot more parameters available that you can control. But for this one, we just need, for simplicity of the tutorial, we just need the frequency itself. And so we have electric, which we know is on channel 3. We have the volume already assigned to channel 3, and so we know that the MIDI allocations of the dials above it will all be in line if we assign them to track 3. So we've selected the source as the electric plugin, we've selected the target as insert 1, and we've selected the frequency as insert 1 is the low pass filter, and we only had the option for the frequency or the resonance. I'm going to hit MIDI learn again, and if we come over to track 3, onto here where we want our cutoff, and twist that, and again on the screen it has assigned this to MIDI CC 26. So now I'll turn that off, I'll come back out of there into my main, and to test it, and we know that it's working. So same principle for assigning the cutoff to an insert, as the facility wasn't available within the instrument plugin itself to assign the cutoff. So next we'll move on to hype again. Very familiar with this instrument. I like this one a lot. This is the one that I have found myself having the most success with live synthesis and production. It just has some pretty epic potential for sounds that start very meager and innocent and end up being an absolute monstrosity of a standalone instrument. And so this one, I know that our filter is in the second tab, and apologies for doing that too fast there. We'll just come back out to the main to access the instrument itself and manipulating the sounds from within the instrument, the waveform and the filter cutoff envelope, etc. You come into the bottom tab here where your plugin program is and select sounds, and at the bottom you have the option for edit instrument. This is the same across all programs, but the setup and the UI that you see is different depending on which instrument you use. And this is my favourite of them all, so I'm just going to pop that release down there, because that's, and we'll just turn everything off, so it's just a simple noise. We've got our cutoff there, so we know that we can turn that. To be able to do that with our AKAI MidiMix. And for the purposes of this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be selecting the filter cutoff and the release, and I'm also going to insert a 1/8 delay effect insert and assign that as well, as this is typically the instrument that I find myself using the most for live manipulation, purely for the fact that it's personally, it's just, I mean, the first instrument that you load up in Hype is called Almighty, and it is exactly that. It is it's just a monster of a noise, but that's way too low for my liking right now. Let's just get that up here. There we go. It's just mega. I like it muchly. So I digress. We'll go back in and we're going to go into menu, and we'll go into menu control. And again, I'm going to be creating 3 effects there, but first what we need to do, as we don't have the delay assigned to the program, we need to quickly do that. So we come out of MIDI Learn and we hit Mix, we find our Hype program, we go into the inserts, we find our delay, and into the parameters. Now, I know personally this delay, I'm very familiar with it. I'm very numerically obsessive compulsive, and so I remember how I like my settings based on the numbers. And so I've got my delay assigned now. So I know that my mix of my delay can be controlled all the way up to 100. The feedback would be nice to be able to manipulate at the same time, but I feel like I need to just keep things basic for the purposes of the video. So we will go back into our mix as we've now assigned the delay. Just confirm that it is on there. We've clicked Hype and our air delay is on insert 1. So we go back to main, into our menu, into MIDI control. and we have 3 parameters we want to assign. We want the amp envelope release, we want the filter cutoff of the instrument, and we also want this 1/8 step delay that we have assigned to the insert on the instrument. So we're going to create 3. 1, 2, 3. And for autonomy, we'll go to our source, we'll find our program, and we'll go to hype on this one as well. In there, into program, into hype, and in this one, into program, into hype. So the first one, the target, it's going to be the top dial, and my top dial for my live synthesis is, ironically, actually my cutoff, which is the opposite to where we've been assigning it for the others. But it doesn't matter where you assign your dials, you can assign them wherever you like. For my live instruments, I tend to have my cutoff at the top, I have my delay in the middle, and I have my release at the bottom. So we'll go ahead and do that. So the first target then is going to be the program. We're going to be going into the cutoff of the program, which is there. And we're going to hit MIDI learn once I remember which track hype's on. It's on number 4. So we're going to go MIDI learn. We're going to go into up from 4 there, because we've already done the volume. I just knocked it by accident, so it's trying to learn that. So as you can see here, if I come off that one, so it's not highlighted, I just accidentally assigned the volume to, well, the cutoff to the volume on there, and that wasn't what I wanted. I just knocked it there. So it just goes to show the slightest touch does pick up on the MPC Live when MIDI learning. So I'm going to go back into channel 4 again. I'm going to pick the one I actually wanted, and that is my cutoff assigned to the top dial on the AKAI MidiMix. Excuse me. And so now we need the delay, which is on the insert. And as I mentioned previously, on the filter cutoff there was only 2 options, but here, as you can see, with delay you have a lot more options, from the whether you want it synced up to the time signatures, whether you want it to pan. There's so many more options on here, but we just want the mix of how much of the delay signal is being received by hype itself. Once again, we're on MIDI learn, we've selected hype, we've selected the target, we've found the insert of the target that we'd like to use, which is the delay, and we found the mix of the delay, which is the option we want to be able to control. So we're going to come into number 4 again, and now we need to twist the middle option, and that has once again assigned that to our hype synth plug-in instrument, whatever you want to call it. On track 4 we've assigned the delay mix to the middle dial on the MIDI mix. And finally, I want the release of the instrument itself, so we're going to go back onto the MPC and find the target into the program itself, and we're going to go and find the amp release. So we got the filter there, and we got the amp, and we've got amp release. We'll select that release. We've got MIDI learn still lit up, and we want it on channel 4, and I want the release on the bottom option. And that is assigning the filter cutoff, the 1/8 delay mix, and the amp release to the 3 dials assigned to track 4, which is hype. And to demonstrate what this does, if I activate Arpeggiator mode on the AKAI MPC Live, once I let go of the button, it is deactivated, but we'll reactivate that. And just for the purposes of this here, I'm just going to turn the length of the notes all the way down. Okay, now I'm going to select a rhythm for the arpeggiator, and the rhythm will be jaunty. So now I know that hype's cutoff is assigned up here. So if I turn this all the way down and then open it up, I can also do the same with the delay. And then I can also do it with the release. And so that is how I like to use the AKAI MidiMix to manipulate the parameters of separate parts of my instrument plugins using the AKAI MPC Live. Hopefully this tutorial has helped you understand a little bit more about how you can use your AKAI MidiMix MIDI controller to use the plugins and instruments within the AKAI MPC Live for live performance, shall we say. And obviously I've not yet covered in the video that you can have the option, of course, to automate what you do with the AKAI MPC MidiMix. So to do that, you can simply hit the read write automation in the top right of the screen on the AKAI MidiMix, the AKAI MPC Live. And that will allow you to record in while your sequence is in record or overdub mode, and that will allow you to record the automation that you put in through the MidiMix controller. If you've enjoyed the video and you have any questions about the video itself, then feel free to leave a message in the comments below, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. Hopefully you've been able to take something educational from this video as I look to create more tutorials that delve a little bit deeper into the MPC Live, as well as a beginner's guide as well. and appreciate any feedback that you've got, but hopefully this has educated and or inspired people to create, as that is what it's all about. So once again, thank you for your time. I've been Vagrant Media, Vagrant Music UK, and you can find me across all platforms online, from Instagram to TikTok to YouTube. And you can find me using Vagrant Media UK. Also a photographer. I specialise in light painting and long exposures and sunrise photography and morning jams on the MPC in various locations. So if you'd like to see what I do in real time, then come and find me on some of the other socials. I'm a human being outside of the tutorial videos and always like to engage with fellow creatives. And if you're watching this, you are definitely one of them. So once again, thank you very much for your time today. I've been Vagrant Media UK. Hopefully this information has helped someone somewhere and allows them to expand on their creative performances. Thanks again.